Hiya, I'm Jasper, and welcome to your video review for Underworld. It's a movie starring Kate Beckinsale, Scott Speedman, Bill Nighy, and some other people. So, as always, I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the furry. To start with the furry, there are vampires in this, which is sort of a furry thing, but they don't do the whole, bat thing. And there's werewolves in this. Also, well, they're called Lycans in this one, and from the special features that I remember watching, they have a more cat-like inspiration for the face than is more stereotypical of werewolves. But has nothing to do with, the Lycans aren't from a cat species. It's just the prosthetic and practical effects designer people just wanted to have that be the inspiration for it, but has nothing to do with the story. Okay, so, but the werewolves do make a big presence in the story. They matter for the story, but the face. Moving on to the good and the bad. So, this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it remains one of my favorite movies of all time. I love the other four, but this one is the best one of all of them, in my opinion. I think it remains the best one, because they give you just enough of the world to give you placed of rough time frame for where you're at technology-wise, and then the rest of it is about the vampires and the Lycans. And it's just the opening sequence is just so badass. Celine, she's a vampire, she's one of the death dealers, they're hunters, and so it opens, she's got this badass fucking leather cloak on, or jacket, and then there's rain, and she's looking out, and then she hops off of this really fucking tall, I don't know, church or something, and goes down, and she just and walks. And I'm sure, I don't know how many takes it took, or what sort of wire work they had to do, but they nailed it. There were other leaps in the other movies that were cool, and there was even other leaps in this one that were not as good. But man, it was so perfect, that opening, because it just establishes their power level, that she can leap from any distance, essentially it looks like, because you're going to reach terminal velocity from how high up it seemed. And then she doesn't even have to do the superhero landing. Thank you, Deadpool. They didn't have to do the superhero landing because she doesn't need to use that much power when she lands, because that's how powerful she is. She just and then walks. And the outfit that she has is just so amazing. I love those boots, and the fact that there are multiple times where they do it close. She is fighting in heels, they are thick heels, but they're fucking this tall. And she is running and kicking ass, and just the fact that she can do that, it's so amazing. And just, I don't know of anybody, anywhere, at any time, in any movie, that comes off the top of my head right now, that it looks more badass and is more badass than Celine in this movie. So, yeah, 100% down with that Celine. Scott Speedman is fine. He does good as the guy who's just caught up in all this. And Michael Sheen, I forgot to mention him, but Michael Sheen is one of the Lycans in this, kind of the leader of the Lycans. And it is so weird thinking of him in Good Omens, because this is the movie that I saw him in first. And I also saw him in Underworld Awakening, or The Beginning, whatever the name of the third one is. And he is just, he is ripped, and he is strong, and he is skin, he's a badass, but he is I don't want to say slender, but he is he's strong and got that definition, but he's not hulking like the Terminator hulking, until he goes all werewolfy or Lycan-y. But to just think of him as the kind of rotund, just, if you've seen Good Omens, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. It's weird, man. It's like Bryan Cranston in Malcolm in the Middle to Breaking Bad. It's just that what? What? So, it was fun because I just recently rewatched the first season and then watched the second season. But watched Good Omens, and then to go back to this and be oh yeah, I do remember his a badass, and it's so weird. It's so weird. But he is a badass, and I love the technique that they used. You gotta watch the special features of this movie, because the technique that they used is the same one that they then later used for Twilight to make it look like they were running fast. And how they do it is so cool, but it's practical, is what I love most about that. So, I love that how much of this is practical, and in fact, I think that it's part of the reason why this movie holds up better than I think one or two of the others, because so much of this is practical effects. Like, yeah, there's a couple of little bits that are CGI, and they're okay. Like, you can kind of see the, like, well, not kind of, you can see the difference, but you're okay with it because so much of it is practical effects. So that is what holds up, and I'm glad that they stuck with the practical effects as much as possible. I do think that the design of the werewolf mouth, it does them a little bit of a detriment because the werewolf, Lycan, whatever, because of that cat-like design, it doesn't open as far as most other werewolf designs that I've pictured and seen do. Like most werewolves, it's this huge maw that just like can clomp down on anything. And these ones, the mouth kind of goes like this. And so it doesn't have, like it can't fit a whole person's head in their mouth a couple of times. So I think it would have been better if they had worked on that a bit, but for what they were able to achieve, practically very impressive. The other thing is how Victor, oh man, once you see Victor, I love, it's towards the end, so I'm not going to say how, but man, Victor, badass motherfucker. Anywho, so excellent movie, and I love as they introduce you to their world and the guns that they use and the technology that they come up with, and just every moment that Celine is on screen is awesome. And Craven. Okay, so I'm going to get into the spoiler section. So, spoiler alert. So, the fact that Michael Sheen's character, you know, he survived since like 1200 whatever AD, and all this time, only to get shot in the back with the silver slugs, or the silver liquid slugs, by Craven, is just so disappointing, because he is so badass, especially if you've watched the third movie, where they do the origin story of him, and see just how much he has been through in just that time period, let alone whatever he's been up to for the past few hundred years, is just, it's so disappointing that Craven is the one that gets him. But I will say that I do like that they showed Michael Sheen's character seeing the love between Celine and Scott Speedman's character. The fact that they got that, and like you could see it in his eyes, and he's just like, he has hope before he dies, because of seeing them together. And since I'm in the spoiler section now, I love that with the Lycans, they are just annihilating the vampires when they're against them one-on-one. Like, yeah, when the vampires have enough rounds of ammunition, sure. But when they're in close quarters and the werewolves can just like come out of nowhere and just like, and just bite them, like they are just decimating the vampires. And so you see how the vampire versus, Lycan war has gone on for so long, because the technology, with rapid fire, auto fire guns and whatnot is still relatively new. So I can imagine just how many Lycans they've been able to, use to just take out however many vampires. So I get the war, but also now that, they have guns, I can see why the war has kind of petered out, because they've probably taken out a bunch of Lycans now. But then they get into close quarters, they're just annihilating them, and then fucking Victor comes along, and you're like, oh, that's why he's an elder. Because, and I think it might have been the black guy, I don't remember, but the dude with a super awesome voice. I'm also sad that he, I think, dies in this one, because I don't see him in any of the sequels, so he definitely dies in this one. And I think it's because he's the one that fights the whip guy, and then he goes against Victor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not going to rewatch it again just because I forget where he died. But I'm probably going to rewatch it again at some point, but not in the next few minutes. So Victor comes along, and one of those werewolves that just annihilated some fucker comes along, and Victor just like grabs him by the throat, blocks his other arm. Which, by the way, what about that other arm? Like whatever, vampires have other arms. Like, that's the thing, is he done that twice. It's fine, just go with it, because he snaps with, I think, one hand the neck of that werewolf and, fucks up that arm too. Like, just with utter disdain, just like, you are so beneath me, you filthy animal. And you're just like, okay, that's why they need the elders. Especially because that other elder, like, seemed to go down pretty easily, so I just wonder how many Lycans died in that fight to get her down. But, yeah. Victor, such a badass. Bill Nighy is always a win. He is always a badass. Love every minute that he's on screen. It's so good. And, I also love that they did the equilibrium thing, where you think that her, like Celine and Victor, are going to have this knockdown, drag-out battle, and, because he's an elder, and she's just, like, going to get her ass kicked, but he's and you're ready for it because, oh, she's got the sword now. And then they fucking equilibrium him, just. And then they wait, and then his face just bloop, just like in equilibrium. I'm just like, yes, oh, like I'm sad about Bill Nye, but whatever. Yeah, so good. Love every minute of this movie. This movie, 2 thumbs way up. Cannot say enough good things about this movie. I love the pacing, love the action, the writing, the acting, the practical effects. The CGI is fine. Yeah, the technology that they used and the world that they showed you is so good. Yeah, definitely watch this. And it's good enough that, you know, rest of the movies are worth watching as well. But this one, if you don't want to watch any of the others, which you should, this one stands alone and it's so good. So that's all I have for this one. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you at the next one. Bye.